Welcome to Compassion School with Reverend Katey Zeh and with me, Reverend Cari Jackson. This week we're going to talk about the question, why is compassion something that's not talked a lot about in our society? We know that religious traditions, spiritual traditions, moral principles throughout history have emphasized the importance of compassion. We know there's been lots of research done on the individual and the social value of compassion, and yet and still, it is something that is not focused on in our society. So, Reverend Katey, why is that?
I will give you my perspective and see if it resonates with you, and anyone listening, I would love to hear your take on this, because I imagine there are many answers to this question, but I think it's in large part because our society just is not designed for the human flourishing of everybody. It's just not. It's set up, I'm talking about the culture of the United States in particular, it's set up, to benefit this small sector of wealthy and powerful people, many of whom are white, straight, cisgendered men, and who are Christian by tradition often. While the rest of us are asked to produce as much as we can for as little as we can. I mean, that is the structure. That is the economic structure. And what is valued is money and power. And so even if the evidence shows us that we could all collectively be healthier, and live more enjoyable lives, if these values of compassion and empathy are at the center, it would require some real letting go, some structural letting go of power over, of controlling others, for that to come at the center. And I don't know what it would take for that kind of momentous shift, but I think that's what is getting in the way, is really the value of power over and control over for the few.
Wow. So when you say, I don't know what it would take for that kind of momentous shift, it's my prayer that in this season where we're dealing with multiple crises simultaneously, that it's awakening enough of us to the need for some real systemic transformation and paradigm shifts. And in a few weeks, that's going to be the focus of our conversation, is about paradigm shifts for society. So I want to cite this one thing. One of the paradigms, as you talk about power over, Brene Brown says, compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. Compassion becomes real, Brown says, when we recognize our shared humanity. Yeah. And so one of the things I believe that trips us up, this power over and is this illusion of separateness. Yes. And we're really all one. Throughout history, we've had this group fighting this group, this tribe fighting this tribe, believing that they are separate from one another. It's the case that Dr. Drew, who was a Black man who invented the blood transfusion process, when he was traveling and was in a car accident in the South, he died because he was denied a blood transfusion, because there was this illusion that white blood and black blood and other kinds of blood are distinctive from one another in some way or not. And so this shared humanity that Brene Brown talks about, and the lack of understanding of that, really keeps us at this place where it's difficult for us to talk about compassion, because it really is something that comes of this oneness. And I love how within Hinduism, the frame, God is one. I love that. And whatever that construct of God is that we might have, it's all one. And while we have these different religious traditions and spiritual traditions and moral principles, at the end of the day, they're leading us to the truth about our oneness. And when we don't live in that truth, we have lots of challenge around that. So there's one other quote I want to share, and that is from Karen Armstrong, former nun who left that tradition and for many years had nothing to do with religion at all, and then started studying religions because of the impact that they have on societies writ large. But Karen Armstrong says, compassion is not a popular virtue. Because often when she talks with religious people and talks about how important compassion is, she said, and these are Armstrong's words, people look kind of bulked and stubborn, as much to say, what's the point of having religion if you can't disapprove of other people? And I see religion in its own way at times can be a common barrier to compassion. And while it's in the texts of most of the religious traditions, the value of compassion within the culture of religion, compassion is often not there, but rather this power over dynamic that you spoke about. What are some other barriers you see in our society to compassion? And I'm so sad to say that religion is often one of the main barriers. But are there others?
Well, just to piggyback off of that for a second, in thinking about that, the inclination to judge others in the name of religion, there's also that understanding of separateness that runs through that, because at any point, any of us could be the one outside of the community, right? And the one ostracized. And there's that illusion of, I would never be the one at the center of this judgment, but yet that could be any of us. And I think our work at RCRC with folks making reproductive decisions, many of them say, I never thought I would have to make this decision, and yet I did. And so it's that, again, illusion of separateness. This will never impact me. I will never have to face this. And yet we do. And that's part of that shared humanity that you were talking about. So yes, religion, definitely. I think others that are barriers to compassion are exhaustion and burnout. We talked, I guess, last week about compassion or empathy fatigue, right? And just feeling the feelings and maybe not caring for ourselves, that gets in the way. I think fear of change and the unknown is a barrier related to that, othering people who are different from us in different ways, and just feeling like we have nothing in common. I can't relate to this person. And it's all about that hyper individualism and the focus on the self. And I think when we're not able to care for ourselves, when we're not tending to our own needs, I think that's often a barrier to compassion. And one of the things that was so pivotal for me as a Christian and a follower of Jesus is understanding that commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Yes. That in that is the requirement to love yourself right there. It's not only about others, it's about yourself as well. And so if we aren't caring for ourselves in healthy ways, we're not able to be compassionate for other people. So that really changed my whole understanding of the Christian faith when I focused on that part of that commandment, because the first part was always emphasized, but not the latter.
Yes.
So yes. I think the barrier is often we're not getting what we need. And when we're not getting what we need, we're tired, we're burned out, we're more prone to judgmentalism, I think.
Yes. And I've talked with so many people through the years whose understanding is that they are unworthy. that
Yes.
they have to earn love. They have to earn compassion. They have to earn grace. They have to earn, whatever is this constant construct of earning. And so they apply that to themselves and to other people. And so that's one of my hopes, that as we talk about barriers to compassion, again, that's extending to others and to self, that we can also invite people to look at, so what is it that you believe about what it means to be human?
Mm-hmm.
Does to be human mean you always have to get everything right? There's that perfectionism that I think is a barrier to compassion, that people extend that sense of perfectionism to themselves, and then they project it also onto other people. And if people are not measuring up to the mark, if they're not earning, then, oh, no, you don't deserve compassion. Because one of the things we hear often among some, and it's largely from evangelicals, and I grew up in that context, but much of the teaching can be that, and then this is also why we want small government, right? Is people have to be deserving of the charity that we extend to them. Charity is another thing that people often confuse with compassion.
Yes.
Whereas in a construct where government is providing or is intended to provide services and new opportunities for people across the board, whether they meet the deservability test or not. And as you were talking about reproductive freedom, many people have this litmus test of deservability. These people deserve to have an abortion, and these don't. These people deserve to have contraception, and these don't. And all of these kinds of things. And so a huge barrier to compassion in our society is this orientation of deservability. And I hope we can help people bust that wide open. So last thing I want to ask you is, so how does stress and anxiety get in the way of compassion?
I don't know about you, but I feel like we're all living in this collective stress and anxiety right now and have been for months. I know I've felt it. And just even outside of these particular times, stress and anxiety are conditions that I struggle with, and anxiety in particular have been medicated for. I think it's important to talk about that and face that stigma around mental health issues. But just for me, that stress and anxiety, which usually come hand in hand, they lead me down this path that I've practiced so many times that it's almost automatic for me. And it's the script that goes something like this: it's all on me, I have no help, and this situation is never going to improve, right? It's all those absolutes. And it leads me into a feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. And when I go to that inner place, it's very isolating, because there is only my own thinking and my own feelings. It's not even considering what someone else might be going through. It's like, that's all that exists, are those thoughts that are mine, that are not even really rooted in reality. And so I think for me, stress and anxiety are usually connected to burnout and exhaustion and that lack of caring for self. So I try now to stop myself when I can tell that script is coming up for me. I go, oh, wait a second. This is actually not a commentary on the lack of support I have or hope for the future. It's really about me just not getting what I need to feel like I'm caring for myself. And so, I think when we can address stress and anxiety and find ways to alleviate those, it does open us up to be more generous, to feel like there's enough, and to live and operate from a place of gratitude.
Yeah. And so self-compassion is what I was hearing you talk about. absolutely important in those moments of stress and anxiety. And as you said, we're living in that moment in an intense, profound way, all of us. And in these moments, homicide rates have gone up, suicide rates have gone up, domestic violence, child abuse, all of those things as people, and alcoholism and drug addiction, all of those things have skyrocketed. They're always here. And when the only ways we know how to self-medicate is really something that causes more harm to ourselves at the end of the day, then it is also less likely for us to have emotional space and mental space to think about and to extend compassion to others. So we've got to start here. My dear friend, Reverend Fred Denard, always said, "It's all an inside job, sugar." And, Fred said that always. And so how do we compassion here in those moments of stress and anxiety? And it indeed strengthens and enhances our capacity for compassion toward others.
Yeah, and sometimes self-compassion isn't very pretty. I mean, sometimes it's just sitting with those very uncomfortable feelings and just not resisting the feelings that are there. So when you're talking about the self-medicating, and we all do it in different ways, it's that wanting the feeling to go away. And I think that there's a connection with the empathy burnout. Like, I just want these feelings that this other person are having to go away. And I need to shut down. So tending to ourselves and caring for ourselves, like I said, it's not always glamorous. Sometimes it is just looking at the shadows that we're seeing and having the hope that we're not going to stay in that place forever, but it's part of the process.
And you and I have talked before about the flying formation of geese, and that there's usually one goose at the lead who's breaking the wind, who's breaking through the hardest part, carving out space, and then it makes it easier for the following birds to come. But what they do is rotate who's at the lead. Right. And so one of the things that is really important is to say, I can't do any more right now.
Yes.
And have a team of people. And I'm blessed. I have a small team of people in my life with whom I say, I can't do any more right now. I need to be still. I need to be quiet. Sometimes when I pray, and this is when I know I'm really stressed and really anxious, because usually when I'm not feeling stressed and anxious, I pray sitting in a chair. When I'm really stressed and anxious, I lie on the floor, I get on my knees, because I say, I need some help beyond me. And there is help beyond me. So for me, I use that help that I access. For me, that is God, and it is also this small team of folks in my life with whom I don't have to look pretty, with whom I don't have to have it all together, with whom I can say, I'm falling apart, and I know they will hold. Mm-hmm. They will hold me emotionally, spiritually, and in whatever ways I might need in that time. And having that group of folks, those individuals with whom I can just be raw and I can be authentic, always helps expand my compassion, my capacity for self-compassion and compassion with others. And so I hope flying in the geese formation, have your team of folks that you know will hold you without your makeup on, which in these days, that's true for most of us, but to be with someone, right, this close and no makeup, and I mean, no pretenses, no trying to put it on, is so valuable. And the heart of compassion we extend to ourselves expands our heart of compassion toward others. When I used to be pastor, I would close every worship service out with the words, breathe in deeply. You know, because it's all about breath. Compassion, breathe in, breathe out. Justice, breathe in, breathe out. Caring, breathe in, breathe out. Love, breathe in, love your neighbor as yourself, but breathe in, breathe out. And, you know, so I would close the worship with, know that God is as close as your very breath. Breathe in, and I would fill in whatever word the service was focused on that day, the theme. So breathe in and know that God loves you unconditionally, for example. And breathe out and share that unconditional love in the world. So I invite our sisters and our brothers, breathe in and breathe out and share with us your thoughts about common barriers in your own life to compassion. And share with us how you manage stress and anxiety in these times and other times in your life. And what are the things you are seeking to do now to help extend more compassion to yourself, breathe in, and extend more compassion in the world, breathe out.
Amen.